All right. Hey, middle school leaders. Thank you for saying yes to leading middle night this year. Super excited to be with you guys in person finally. Super excited to get students back in the role of middle nights on a weekly basis, and just super excited to see our team come together, and hopefully God will bless and use what we offer him this year. So this video is just going to go over the Eastbrook Middle Leader meeting that is kind of still happening on Sunday, but only a few of us are going to be able to be there. So I wanted to make a video to just recap the middle school specific parts of this. There is still a child protection and overall student ministry training that those of you who are not able to be here on Sunday still have to go through. Nick and I will talk through how we can make that most accessible and easiest for you guys who are not able to join us. But my hope with this video is to give you enough of kind of the 30,000 foot view of middle school ministry this year, and then a little bit more details around what middle nights are going to look like and your role in them specifically. So I'm hoping that this, in conjunction with that leader guide that I sent out for specifically next Wednesday, will give you guys kind of enough of context for us to jumpstart together. And so obviously this is a non-traditional start to the school year, right, where we're starting in mid-October, and we haven't really had leader meetings and leader trainings yet. So I really appreciate you guys' flexibility and understanding of this transition. So with all that being said, let's dive in. So let's first look at this Eastbrook Middle Leader Meeting guide. And so let's start here. Why are we here? This is language that you're going to hear me and hopefully Nick and Lori use a lot through this school year. And it just kind of sums up some broad reasons as to why student ministry exists. The first reason is that we are here to pursue ourselves, or to pursue inward. This can mean a lot of different things, but primarily we're focusing on self-growth here. So we are here to help other people, help our students grow in their understanding of themselves, in their understanding of who God has created them to be, and pursue essentially who they are. And so middle school a lot of times is the building blocks, the starting blocks for that journey of kind of, I hate to put it this way, but like self-discovery. And so we are here in one sense to pursue inward, to go inward, to figure out who we are, how has God designed us to operate in this world, and how we can serve out of that place. Second reason we are here, to pursue upward, to go and pursue God. So this one is pretty obvious, right? We are a ministry, so we are here to pursue worship of God. We are here to pursue his word. We are here to pursue being transformed by him. And so it's not just about ourselves, right? It's about what God is doing in us and through us. And then we're here to pursue outward, right? So this has to do with pursuing other people around us. A lot of times this will refer to how we are serving each other and treating each other in the context of middle night. But eventually down the road, this will also flow into how we serve other people in the church, how we serve other people outside of the church. And so I just find it easy to have these directions in mind, right? We are here to go inward. We're here to go upward. We're here to go outward. There's a lot more to that vision and a lot more layers to that as you go into high school and young adults, but for now that'll suffice. Let me know if you have any questions about that, want to talk deeper about that. Let's then talk about your role right here. And so your role overall, like if you just had to go to the chalkboard and write your job description essentially for being a middle school leader, it is to love with gospel love, teach with gospel truth, and empower with gospel perspective. So again, your job is to love with gospel love, teach with gospel truth, empower with gospel perspective. And so to just break that down real quick, right? Your first job is to love on students as they come through the doors, as they go through the night, even outside of middle night. Your main objective is to form relationships with our students and to, as much as it relies on you, to make them feel welcomed and loved and invested in. Because sometimes our students are coming from situations where they don't always get to experience that, unfortunately. And even if they are coming from a really healthy background, we all need to know that we are loved and we belong. And especially in this new year and this new social groups that will be forming, it's just important for us to primarily love our students. Second part of this, teach with gospel truth. I think this is pretty straightforward, right? We are here to guide them through, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. We're here partially to, through our actions and our words and our attitudes and our relationships with them, teach them gospel truth. I'm not talking literally just about the four gospels, obviously. I'm talking about all of scripture and all of what God has done in scripture and in our lives. We're here to teach that truth and not just teach in terms of I'm going to verbally tell you what this truth is, but teach more so in the demonstrating way, right, to our students, and then also in the discovery way, which we'll talk about a little bit later, where we're not just stating a fact, we are helping guide students to form their own understanding. Because, you know, we as adults, we have a lot of experience with forming our own beliefs and our own experiences with God. And while sometimes those will come in really helpful to talk about with students, most of the time we want to guide students to their own understanding, right? And then empower with gospel perspective. So what I mean by this really is that once students recognize that they're loved and they're starting to intake knowledge and wisdom about who God is and about who they are, there comes this point where they can start like acting out of those places. And so what I mean by empower with gospel perspective is really we want to help students serve and engage in ways that is specific to how God has created them, right? So if we take Damar, for example, if you haven't gotten the pleasure to meet Damar, she is an 8th grader this year, and she is an incredible vocalist and guitarist, and she just loves music. And so we on the worship team side have been investing in her because she has shown a desire and a love and frankly a natural ability to serve others through her music. And so that is one of the, you know, the more I should say obvious public kind of ways that God has designed people. And there's a lot of ways that God designs us that's a little bit more difficult to kind of fine tune. So we want to spend a lot of time this year as we get to know our students looking for opportunities to plug them in and serve, whether it be in the middle night context or in another ministry of the church or in their schools or whatever. Okay, so that's your overall goal. Love with gospel love, teach with gospel truth, and empower with gospel perspective. The second part of your role on a weekly basis, the biggest part of your role, I should say, is leading a small group. So your objective here is to discover who your small group is and guide it to be a family, right? As in essence, you as their small group leader, you are the most direct youth pastor. I'm not that role in the sense that you guys will have more contact, more relational contact and meaning with them than I can with everyone, right? And so I want you guys to see, as you get to know your small groups more, I want you to see yourselves as their youth pastor. And so over time, right, your goal is to guide that to be a community that feels comfortable being vulnerable, that encourages each other. We'll talk a little bit about that later. So being a small group leader, what does that mean practically? One, attitude-wise, people over program, right? So we'll talk about that a good chunk this year. People over program. Anytime we walk into our doors or at middle night, we will have a programmatic plan, but that is not the priority. And so when I start to give out specific small group guides for your time, I want you guys to feel the freedom to use that as a template if you want, and if you feel like you need that to guide the conversation, go for it. That's why it's there. And hopefully that'll spark good conversation. But I also want you guys to feel the freedom to take the conversation where you think it needs to go. And so if you don't touch the prepared content, I am not going to be frustrated. There's not going to be tests or anything. People over program. And so feel free to let go of whatever programming I provide for that time. And then, just overall, if a middle night is not going as planned, that's okay. We will pivot where we need to pivot, but we will always prioritize seeing our kids, our students, as more important than the program. Second part, prepare ahead of time. I'm going to do my best to prepare you guys, to give you guys the materials to facilitate small groups as best as you can. I know that everyone has their own style of leading, everyone has their own style of preparing, and I want to encourage you guys to work in whatever ways work best for you. But I think that leading a small group works best when you at least take time to look at the material a little bit ahead of time, just so that you can more naturally kind of lead that group and be prepared to mentally lead that group in the direction of the content. And then again, like if you pivot away from that, that is all good. I want to encourage that as well. And then eventually, this is not an expectation now, but a desire for later is that you would connect with your small group people outside of middle night. That could mean having group events at different things at your house or at a park or whatever. We can talk about that later, and providing funding and stuff like that. That could also just mean like getting their phone numbers and texting, hey, how are you doing? Like, I was praying for your math test this week. How did that go? Stuff like that. Because without going super deep down this right now, oftentimes middle schoolers are guilty. We're all guilty, but a lot of this trend starts kind of in middle school. Middle schoolers will learn how to wear multiple masks and multiple faces in different platforms or areas of their life, right? So a mask, like one mask might be for school, one might be for church, one might be for family. And they're not always, malintended, but a lot of times we learn how to act certain ways to be accepted by the groups that we are around. And so one of the things that helps kind of unite those in a way that leads towards integrity is leaders like us slowly but surely integrating ourselves into other parts of students' lives, so that, like, for example, they don't only think of Joran in the context of church, they think of me also, hopefully, wanting to invest in how their school is going, wanting to get to know their family, wanting to support them at their sporting events, stuff like that. Again, that's an eventual desire. We don't need to pursue that immediately. We need to just start with the basic relationships at middle night. And then finally, your role also, hopefully, if you are able to, I would love help in some of these auxiliary ways. And so I would love help throughout the year leading. If you guys want to help lead games, I'm totally open to that. If you are able to help set up and tear down, if that works with your availability, we would love help with that. If you guys want to teach, I am very open to letting our volunteer leaders teach. And we have materials and resources for that as well. Worship, we have student worship teams that we'll lead about once a month, but there's a lot of other weeks that currently we could use some musical worship. And so if you guys have desires to help with that or to lead that, let me know. I didn't put it on this list, but I did put it in the leader guide for next week. We also will need help with like logistical things like check-in processes and helping afterwards with kind of pickup and connecting with parents there. And then recruiting. We rely heavily on volunteers. I fully believe that volunteers are like the literal wheels on the bus that make us go down the road. And so if you know other people who might be interested, your networks are amazing, and it is easier to convince somebody to try something if you are also there with them and they believe your words, right? So overall, that's kind of your role, right? Let's go over to this middle night schedule thing right here. So this is just a general outline. This is going to kind of shift over time. The first couple weeks will probably not look like this just because we're setting a few different things up in order for the structure to work well. And then the second thing that might change is that small group time that you see at the kind of towards the end. I'll let you take a look at that. Will expand on nights, ideally expand on nights where we don't have student worship planned, because 20 minutes for a small group, I know it might sound like a lot if you're like, holy crap, like middle schoolers for 10 minutes are scary. But the reality is that after a teaching time, even if I make it, as interactive as possible, there's going to be a little transition time, and middle schoolers take a while to kind of oftentimes to rally back into like a really focused environment. So after all of that's done, 20 minutes is actually not that long with middle schoolers. And so to really, get into content. And so that might expand into the structured worship time you see there. If you have questions about the schedule, definitely let me know and we can talk about that too. I am not like married to this structure. And so if you have suggestions or ideas, or if we start the first couple of weeks and you have concerns, I'm very open and welcoming to that feedback. Just feedback in general. I'm very much appreciate feedback and collaborating with these things. Okay, so let's hit up small groups. So I'm just going to read it right here. We believe that small groups are the best vehicle in which to travel down the discipleship road together. It is where students are most directly known and loved. Consistency in your attendance, both physically and relationally, and in students' attendance is like the air in the tires that allows your car to move down that road. So let's make it a comfortable ride. I think that sums it up, right? I really believe that small groups over the course of time bear so much fruit. And if we really want students to pursue themselves, pursue God, pursue others, they need to be in a community where they are known and where they are loved, and they're also challenged in particular ways. And I'm going to do my best to facilitate all those from the front. But the reality is that we are relational beings, and that we often learn best and are changed best when we are in relationship with other people, not just necessarily from sharing of information. So all that being said, your consistency, physically and relationally is super important to this. Obviously, like you guys, we're adults, life happens. I'm not gonna be mad if you miss here and there, as long as you communicate with me ahead of time. At least a week ahead of time would be ideal. But I do want to stress that like your role is mission critical, frankly, to what we're doing here. And so thank you. Like that deserves a huge thank you. And I want to just emphasize the importance of that here. And the fact that if you've never done this before, like you just being here in one sense is enough, and you being like relationally available to meet new students and to engage in relationship with them. Like if you are willing to come and show up and do that for an hour and a half, 2 hours, that is all the training you need in one sense. On the other hand, we do want to give you guys more material and more training over time to kind of shape that. So hopefully we're not leaving you completely in the dark there. I also want to talk through small group priorities, because there's 1,000 different ways to lead small groups. And I think a lot of that varies depending on the age you're working with and the context and stuff like that. So I want to just share some priorities for this year based on what I've seen last year and just knowing middle schoolers. So the first priority is to know each other. We talked about this when I brought up People Over Program. Same thing. A great way to do that to start off in a not super intimidating way is just to ask, hey, like, how was your week? Tell me about how school is going. Are you in anything that is super intriguing or interesting for you right now? Do some highs and lows. And then once you get to know them a little bit more, ask them about, hey, like what's not going super hot, right? What are some struggles that you're experiencing and whatnot? If you know me, I tend to go deep really fast. And that sometimes works, but I'm also aware that, like, especially with middle schoolers, sometimes they're not always ready to share right away. And so knowing and forming a relationship over time, even if it seems shallow at first, will provide you some social capital to go deeper later. So priority number one, know each other. Number two, listen. So I have the tendency, and I think a lot of adults who are passionate about sharing God's truth have this tendency, is to over talk and over communicate in a small group. And I think it's really important to remember that our students need to create, they need to synthesize information that they've been hearing and processing, and they need to process that into their own words and their own sense of understanding. Oftentimes, because these, we'll talk about a lot of things in our walks with God that we have had plenty of time to mull over and think through and talk through. But sometimes we're talking about stuff that might be completely new to students, or it's like old content for them, but they're thinking about it in a fresh way. And so a priority in small groups is to listen to what students are actually saying and respond to what they're actually saying. So active listening, right? Which does take more energy and more presence. I get that. But it is worth it, because students are not going to learn as much if we just talk at them versus if we open up the space and occasionally kind of guide or force them into processing out loud and working together to ask or to process rather. Another asterisk there, that input is really think about how you can ask open-ended questions. That'll get some minds turning and some conversation happening, even if it's not exactly the conversation you are intending. Open-ended questions are just a really good diving board into seeing where your group is at. Third priority, we want to explore and empower more than explain. So again, we want to explore and empower more than explain. And here's what I mean by that. We want to walk with them in their learning process. We don't want to force them to end up where we are, for a couple of reasons. One, because we're adults, we've had more time to process and think, and we came to these conclusions by our own journey. And two, sometimes, if we're being honest, there's things in scripture that are more gray than black and white. And it is possible that it's very possible that our theology is actually not 100% accurate. And it's really important to create space to understand and demonstrate that like, while I've gone through, my process on this particular subject, here's what I see in scripture and why I see in scripture, and help take students along that journey. That's going to be way more effective than just saying, I believe in this because of this verse, end of conversation, right? We want to walk with them in their learning process. Again, ask guiding and open-ended questions. And then the third point here is become comfortable with wrestling. Become comfortable with wrestling. This point I wanted to highlight because I think it's a longer conversation. So I'm trying to figure out how much to share here. I think this needs to be a priority because, like I just said, a lot of stuff in scripture is, frankly, if we're being intellectually honest, it's more gray sometimes than we're ready for, or maybe that traditionally we've been taught to see in scripture. And even if the subject in scripture is not, in question in terms of interpretation, some things are just weird in the Bible. Some things are just difficult in the Bible. And so we don't want to shy away from those. We actually want to embrace those because we want to give our students the tools and the context to go through, to analyze those things well and not be scared away from our walk with God or their understanding of the Bible because we didn't give them the space to process and ask those questions. And so there might be things we talk about this year that don't have a finite answer and don't have a nice, clean, and tidy answer. And the students might not be able to, even if there is one, the students might not always land there. And so that's okay. I want us to become comfortable with wrestling because that is one of the best tools I think we can give our students as they go off into high school and into college, and they are faced with a lot of things coming out that at once. But if we can give them the tools to ask intellectually honest questions and give them the tools to analyze and process things well through the lens of scripture, through their own experience, that's going to set them up for long-term walk with God, better than just giving them this canned answer, right? So small group priorities: know each other, listen, explore, and empower more than explain. All right. So let's talk about the syllabus a little bit for this year, or at least for the semester. I'm working on next semester soon. First 4 weeks, we are just looking at the Bible. And the reason for this is really, I want us to have a common shared understanding of what this book is that we are going to study for the rest of the year in different ways. And frankly, when I ask a lot of students, like, what do you think the Bible is? I get all sorts of answers, ranging from your kind of a canned expected answers all the way to like answers that might not be right, but they're fun to talk about. And then there's, a handful of students that really give you some deeper answers than you would expect. And so first 4 weeks going to be surrounding that. Then November 15th, we'll do a Friendsgiving. I'll give more information as we get closer. And then we'll have a week off for Thanksgiving. And then we are doing an Advent series. And each week we're going to talk about those themes. They should align with the candles. We're not going to quite get to joy, which would be December 20th. We might talk about it a little bit, but that'll be a Christmas party. If you wanted to look more at resources that I'm going to use this year, Grow Curriculum is a curriculum that I've used in the past, and that Jamie has used in the past. It's a great curriculum. I think I tend to edit it a little bit just for our context, but as we go on throughout the year, I might give out some resources with that. If you're interested in resourcing like that, let me know and I can send you some stuff. I will reference the Bible Project a lot in the first series. If you haven't heard of Bible Project, I would highly recommend checking them out. They do some YouTube videos, a lot of recaps of the Bible and themes and stuff like that, but they also have a podcast I listen to that goes way deeper, and kind of touches like seminary territory, which is super cool. And then the YouVersion app or Bible Gateway are just some really great resources that I use a lot and that you can totally use with your small groups, or just for yourself if you want. Okay, so looking ahead, what can you expect from communication? So like I said in the email, I'll try to send out leader emails every week with those things. I'll try to eventually send out all middle school emails that you get, that'll go out to parents. Currently, Nick is helping me send those. I'll figure that out over the next couple of weeks. And then I'm a big fan of texting and calling. If you don't want to, I totally understand that. Just let me know and I can make sure that if I want to communicate with you, that it can be through email if you'd prefer. But I personally prefer texting or calling. And so that'll often be, hey, like, do you want to set up a time to get coffee? Or do you want to talk through things? If I have questions or if you have questions about particular students or things that you saw, big fan of that. And then kind of like I said earlier, I'm a big fan of getting your input, because I believe that I don't have all the answers. And I believe that God has placed you guys here this year to really shape our ministry and to shape our students well. And so I want to do that with you. And so please, like, give me all the input, give me all your thoughts. And then feel free to ask me any questions. Like, I don't really have any questions that are off limit. So hit me up. And then I also we'll talk about future fun a little bit in those emails. I do want to establish a rhythm of having leader meetings on a Sunday morning occasionally. I'm still trying to figure out what that looks like right now. And maybe eventually some forced family fun, because I believe that the way that we relate together as a community and the depth that we go with each other will directly impact how we minister to students. So I'll do some work on that after we kind of get a foundation of middle nights down. Dates to get on your calendar right now. So take out your calendar, mark these down, because then you can't tell me that I didn't tell you early. So middle school winter retreat, I think you should make this a priority as much as you can. February 16th to the 18th. It's going to be up at Fort Wilderness. So there's a lot there that I'll tell you guys later. Get that on the calendar. And then next summer, this hasn't officially been booked yet, but we are working with Fort to do some sort of adventure trip August 1st through the 4th. That is going to take the place of the camping trip that was scheduled later the fall, most likely. We might do some like a fall camping trip in addition to this trip, but for right now, I would ask you guys to prioritize as much as possible that August 1st through the 4th time and that February 16th through the 18th time, knowing that there might not actually be a fall camping trip next year. Nick and I are also considering what do retreats in general look like. So give that talk a little bit later. And then again, recruitment. Do you know anyone crazy enough to do middle school ministry with us? Think about it, mull it over. I've learned a valuable lesson just in life is when opportunities come up, like let other people say no for themselves. Don't say no for them. And God has brought many people into unique positions in my life that I didn't expect because I asked them about getting involved somewhere, even if I thought that they would say no. So God surprises us, right? Finally, I wanted to share my heart for you because this section goes beyond logistics and planning and small group sessions, because take all that away and I still deeply care for you guys. I deeply want to walk with you guys this year. I want to support you. And so here's my heart for you in a summarized version. One, I want you to walk with God, right? Like we are all children of God, and in order to be effective middle school leaders and just healthy human beings, we need to have an active walk with God. And so I want to encourage you guys to that. I'm going to do my best to do that in little ways. I encourage you guys to be involved in other areas of church too, because as a middle school leader, you are pouring out. And yes, God often actually uses middle schoolers and things at Middle Nights to grow me, right? So there is that side of it, but primarily you are pouring out as a middle school leader. It's really important that you have places in your life to take in, right? And so hopefully that's Sunday mornings in some way. Hopefully you're involved in a small group. Hopefully you're involved in some form of place where you don't have to lead, where you can be poured into. That's really important in being community. So I want you to walk with God. And if any part of middle school ministry in general is making that part of your life a struggle, please let me know, because your involvement in this ministry is not worth added stress in your walk with God. That's not how I think involvement in ministry should work out. So my number one heart for you, I want you to walk with God. Heart for you, part number 2. I want to be your biggest cheerleader and coach. What I mean by that is I want to encourage you and equip you. Again, like I said before, I believe that God has brought each of you here this year for very particular reasons, and that he's going to use you in very particular ways throughout this year. And so I want to encourage you. I want to set you up as best as I can for you to go and love these students well. So I want to be your biggest cheerleader. I don't want to stop what you are doing. I want to cheer you on. And so if there's ways that it feels like there's anything that I'm doing that's stopping you from being the best small group leader you can be, the best presence in these students' lives that you can be, please let me know and we can reevaluate, right? And then I also want to be, sometimes I want to be your coach, right? I want to equip you guys and give you tools, especially if you feel like maybe this is new and I don't really have, much experience in this. I want to give you guys tools and things to think about or strategies to approach students with this year, just to try and see if they work well for your group or not. And And then the third part of my heart for you is that I want you to find joy amongst, other things in investing in students, right? Like if we just slow down and breathe, I want you to find joy in investing in students. I know for a fact that not 100% of this school year will be the most fun thing ever. I know that middle schoolers have a way of stretching our patience sometimes and our ears sometimes. And it's in just life. There will be Wednesdays that we probably don't want to be here, right? But I'm hoping and I'm praying, and I want you to find joy in serving these students and in knowing them. And for me, a couple of those joyful moments happen when I see a student have like a light bulb moment. There's like a light above me, like a light bulb moment of understanding something about scripture, something about themselves, something about God that they maybe have never understood in that way before. Like for me, seeing that happen in front of me is like it almost always brings me joy. That's part of why I love doing this. I also find a lot of joy when I see students like serving other students in unique ways, right? So I brought up the example of Damar. I love watching Damar lead worship because she is genuine about it, and she's using her gifts to lead other students. And there's just a preciousness about that just brings me joy. And then middle schoolers, they're also hilarious sometimes and so energetic that their joy can be infectious. So that's my heart for you guys. I want you to find joy in what you're doing. Obviously it's not going to happen all the time, and I think that's okay, but my heart for you is that you would find that joy. So that's a lot. As I say, as it says at the bottom of the sheet, I'm always here for you. Please text or call me or email me. I will respond as best as I can, as soon as I can. I'm going to stop sharing the screen for a second. Stop share. Okay, there's my face. Last thing I want to do, I know it's been a longer video than I intended. Last thing I want to do is just walk you through small group boxes. So every week when you come, you are going to have, your small group is going to have one of these bins that will have, if I'm prepared, everything you need for small group time that night. So I'm going to walk you through the box just so you know what to expect. Each box has some writing utensils. I think I put a mixture of like colored pencils, pens, normal pencils in here. Just writing utensils, I think are just good to have in general. You'll have paper and like small group questions and guides in there printed out. This first week, we're not going to do traditional small groups, so you don't have them in there. This week, we are going to have everyone fill out like a new person form because it's the first week, everyone's new. So that's in there for you. I'll walk you through that on Sunday. Each bin has some small amounts of Play-Doh. Jamie found this. She said that these have worked sometimes in the past for when you have students that are really fidgety and just need something in their hands. So feel free to use this how you want, whether you want this to be a fidget kind of distractor, or if you want this to be like a creative tool for illustration or whatnot. One of the options also, as we're talking about fidgeting on this card, they can either choose when they come the next week to get a popper keychain. So those like plastic things with multiple dots that you can pop in and out. That helps with fidgeting sometimes. So hopefully a good amount of students will select that. Then you also have this red style lookup with pieces of small paper in it. And this, we're going to try to incorporate this at different points throughout the year. This is called the Sup Cup. And originally what this came from is Bonnie and I served at a church called Blackhawk in Madison. And we, at least my boys' small group, had something called the Sup Bro jar, where it was literally a mason jar that we could write anonymous questions and put into for our small group to address. And supposed to be like the, an opportunity to say, "Sup, bro, let me ask you a question." So obviously we don't have mason jars. This is the best I could find. And so this is the Sup Cup. And feel free to use this as you desire in your small group times. You don't have to use it, but I found this to be a great place and in way to get insight into what students are thinking. Sometimes you'll get silly questions, and sometimes it's fun to address those. But other times you'll get really good questions that probably wouldn't have come out of the student's mouth or hand, I should say, if they're writing it. The student wouldn't have brought it up if there wasn't an opportunity to just write down questions. So you can utilize this anytime you want. Let me know if you need more piece of paper. I can get you more piece of paper. And then sometimes throughout the year, we will use this kind of collectively. I'll guide us through times of that. So that is what you can expect in your small group bins. If you need anything else, remember, I want to be your cheerleader and coach. So if there's things that you want in your small group box that isn't, let me know and I can do my best to make that happen. I think that's it. So thank you guys for watching, for sticking around. Please reach out if you have any questions. I'm very excited to serve with you guys and hopefully take y'all out for coffee at different points and get some FaceTime with you personally. So thank you guys. Love you guys and can't wait for next Wednesday to start. Peace.